Good morning. Welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. We have almost made it. We are almost done with 2023. 2023 is not been a bad year for me. I went through a patch of like 4 really bad years. We're not going to say what years those were because we all know what years they were. But I had a great reading year. It's been a good year for my family. Life is getting back to a new normal after COVID. So I'm sorry, I just realized I'm a little bit crooked here. Sorry, hopefully I'm not going to knock this all over. Probably should have done this before I started filming, but you know me. Anyway, so yeah, we're almost there. This is my last weekly update for 2023. I have already filmed my 2024 goals. That's going up on New Year's Day. Depending on when I finish my books. Well, I'm going to do my December and 2024 wrap up all together. I think that'll come out on Tuesday of next week. And then on Thursday, I will have my December book haul. And then I think we'll be back to like normal month things. My 5 on Friday yesterday was my 5 top books of the year. I don't know if I'm going to do any more kind of like best of wrapping up things like that. I don't know yet. I'm not going to do worst book of the year. I love watching those. But I'm not going to do it because I just kind of feel kind of bad about it. But I'm just not going to do it. Anyway, so I hope you all, if you celebrate Christmas, had a nice holiday. We had a nice holiday. I talked about Yola Boca Flood on my, when was that? Was that Thursday? I think that was Thursday's video where I talked about it. I did get a question. I'm still working through comments, and I've still got like so many videos left to watch. I'm getting there. The comment was, did you do all this on Christmas Eve? Yes, I did want to say we do this on Christmas Eve. In our family, we are Christmas morning gift openers. Apparently this is a really hot topic with a lot of people. Growing up, my mother was very firm. Christmas Eve, you open your gifts on Christmas Eve. I personally never liked that. My father didn't like that. So when I moved out on my own, I met my husband, who's from a family that's a Christmas Day opener. We like doing it Christmas Day. There was one time when I was like an older teenager, young adult, when I tried to force the Christmas Day opening on my mother, and it didn't work well. So what happened was we put off, I was like, we're not going to open gifts before church. And then we went to the 11 o'clock church service because, I could still stay awake for an 11 o'clock church service then. And my mother made me stay up until 2:30 in the morning opening gifts. She'd be like, just one more, come on, open the gift. You can go to bed after this gift. So yeah, but my mother, rest in peace. It's done. We do it Christmas Day. And so we do Yola Boca Flood. That's like what we open on Christmas Eve. So New Year's is going to be pretty quiet for us. We don't like to be on the roads on New Year's. It's not a good time to be. People are crazy on New Year's. So we usually just stay home on New Year's. What we have done for the past few years, this started in 2019 or 2020, but if you start the movie Avengers Endgame at a certain time, you can time it so when Tony does his snap, that's midnight. So we do that every year. The thing with it though is like once he does his snap, there's still 45 minutes of movie left. So my kids are usually like, yeah, I'm going to bed. And then they just leave me to cry by myself to the end of the movie because that movie makes me cry like no other. Anywho, so that's what we're going to do for New Year's. Kids have Monday off. They go back to school on Tuesday. We have our, every 2 weeks of Christmas break, most places. In the Portland, Oregon, in that school district, they only got 1 week because they went on strike. It was a whole thing. But most places get 2 weeks of winter break. Some places you get that extra week before Christmas, which we do, and I much prefer that. And some places you get it the week after Christmas. I prefer the week before because January 2nd, I'm ready for my kids to be back in school. So, speaking of which, they're coming down. I waited a little longer to do this video today because I hopefully have, the garbage is done. The garbage trucks have already come, but I'm not sure about that. So we'll see. Anyway, last week I finished 4 books. Not as impressive as it sounds. Really, it's not. The 4 books are 3 novellas and I finished a short story collection. But I did have a DNF, and I DNF'd Blood Sisters by Vanessa Lillie. So this book, I had it in my mind, was really highly hyped. But once I finished it, I realized I'd only heard about it from 2 places. I'm a bookish friend on for the Currently Reading podcast. I'm one of their patrons, so they have their IPL list. Indie press list. And this was one of them on a previous month. And they talked about it. And when they talk about it, they usually have only read the beginning. So, I'm not saying that they love this book and I hated it. There's things going on in the kitchen. Sorry about that. But also both me and my bookish best friend have, my TBR subscriptions through Book Riot, and we share what we get with each other. And this book was one of her recommendations for this series of recommendations. So those are the only 2 places I heard about it. It is a mystery. It's an indigenous cop. She is like Cherokee, I think, in it. And she tries to solve a mystery. I can't speak to how good the mystery is because I DNF'd at 26%. The reason I did, there were several reasons. One, I didn't think the writing was very good. Honestly, it didn't feel well written to me. And the other reason was, it was one of 3 books by Indigenous authors I was reading. And when you're doing that, the weak one really stands out. Unfortunately, just writing style. But also the other reason was this past year. So in the not too distant past, I think it was this summer, I read Shudder by Ramona Emerson, which I liked, didn't love, I liked it. Not a perfect book, but there's a lot of similarities between these 2 books. And where there are similarities, without fail, Shudder did it better. So it wasn't standing up for me. And it was like 1 a.m. and I'm like, I have to read this much of it so I can finish it by New Year's. And I'm like, why? I'm not enjoying this. I don't need to read this. This isn't for anything. So I said, screw it, and DNF'd it. So there you go. So for what I did finish, none of this will be a surprise. So I finished The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett. If you have not read The Appeal, you need to read that before reading this because this book spoils The Appeal. Just an FYI. But, strongest mystery? No. Fun little Christmas read? Yes, I enjoyed it. It's good for what it is. And I'll probably pull it out next Christmas too. It was a nice, fun little read. I finally finished, this is my last short story collection I had going for the year, The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So I had never read the short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, and that's what she is most famous for. It's a fantastic story. People can sing the praises about it. It deserves all the praise. But there's a lot of other stories in this book besides The Yellow Wallpaper, and for the most part, they're all really good. We use the term, of her time as sort of an excuse to excuse sort of some questionable language or bad, whatever. We do it a lot with Agatha Christie, But I do want to use that term in a different sense with this book of being of her time, because these stories were really written right at the real beginning of like the women's rights movement. So we're before the suffragette movement, but we're right kind of at the beginnings of it. And you can see that in here. This is really a great time capsule book for a lot of reasons. I really enjoyed the story. There was one that really stuck out to me, and the story wasn't anything super special. And it wasn't written especially differently, I guess, than the other ones. But it was about, you get a scene of a very wealthy woman. She's a professor, so she's a professional woman too, just falling on her bed and sobbing. And then you get the scene of a servant girl falling on her bed and sobbing. And it's pretty clear what has happened in this is the servant girl is pregnant with the professor's husband's child. And I'm going to spoil the story. Sorry. I can't remember what the name of the story was. So it'll be a surprise if you read this. And the professor's the Ms. Professor's, her first inclination is to throw this servant out. She's a disgrace. She needs to leave the house. And then she stops and she thinks, wait a minute. This is a young girl who is in a position where she doesn't have a lot of say in her life. She doesn't have a lot of control over her life. it's very clear. There's a reason how she finds out it's her husband. So her husband took advantage of this girl. This servant girl did not make the professor a victim. The professor realizes this. The servant girl herself was a victim. They're both victims, really, of this man. So instead of kicking the servant girl out, she takes the servant girl under her arm and they just sort of leave. And she starts a new life elsewhere. And the husband comes back and he's like, where'd everyone go? And then he gets really mad because how dare that servant girl ruin his life? Because he does love his wife. He just, can't keep his pants up, I guess. And he goes on. And finally he finds them. And he goes to her house because she's got another job teaching. She's teaching under her maiden name. And he knocks on the door. And he comes in. The professor brings him into a room. And she calls in the servant girl who's holding a baby. And they just look at him and say, what do you have to say for yourself? And I love that story. I just, it's not a super original story. It was completely predictable. I just loved the points that she made in it. And there's just some great ones in there. So I really recommend this collection. It is a pretty hefty collection. I wonder if they number the stories in here. They don't. There's a lot of stories. I will say the writing style doesn't differ from story to story. So I would not recommend reading this straight through or even reading a story a day. I would definitely pick it up, put it down, or as I did, is I alternated it with other story collections, because I think if you do just try to read this straight through, it will become very monotonous. And that would be a shame because these stories are really fantastic. Okay. Then, as I said in previous video, this time of year when I run out of books and there's still some month left or still some year left, I go to my Kindle singles, and I actually read two. I finished them technically today. One I started late at night and just read all the way through, and one I started yesterday and started today and finished today. So the first one was Stockholm by Catherine Steadman. I have not previously read Catherine Steadman, although I do know of her work, and I think I believe she wrote The Family Game, and I think I have that either on my Kobo or in my Libro account. But this was, I'm not going to say much about the story because their novellas are easy to spoil, but this is a story of a controlling relationship. On one hand, there are details about the main character that made the whole setup kind of ridiculous. But on the other hand, Steadman writes plays really, really well with this book, with this story. And it's a good hors d'oeuvre to make me want to read more by Catherine Steadman, even though I do think this is a little bit ridiculous. But I ended up giving it a B+. The second one I read was Golden Hills by Jennifer Weiner. I think I mentioned this one earlier. So let's talk about Jennifer Weiner for a second. I have read Jennifer Weiner. I've read most of her books. I've not read all of her books. But from the beginning, from her first book, which was Good in Bed. And she's a really good writer. I really enjoy how she just takes her time for her story to unfold. She will give you all the information you need for the story. And she doesn't rush herself. I really like that. I like her, I think she can write some interesting characters. But of late, I've been really frustrated with her books. Now, she has always written characters about where she is at that point in her life. So she started in her 20s with Good in Bed, and she's been writing, she's now in her 50s, so she's been writing this whole time, but she's gotten to this point now where I don't think she knows who she is, or she knows what kind of writer she is, or the kind of people she wants to write about. Her last few books have been very disappointing to me. In fact, I have not read her most recent book, The Breakaway. Laura at Book Lover, Laura read it and didn't like it, and someone just not liking a book is not something that's going to get me to not read it. But when she said why she didn't like it, they were reasons that I knew I wouldn't like that book. So I chose not to read it. So back to Golden Hills. This is a story, basically, repercussions of something that happened many years ago at a fat camp. And this was back to being the Jennifer Weiner that I really love. And I really enjoyed this story. So it was really heartening for me to read this story. It made me, because I was like, do I even want to keep reading Jennifer Weiner? Because when you start reading books and they continually fall short for you, it's hard to stay with an author. And this was enough for me to stay with an author. Am I going to go back and read The Breakaway? Probably not. But I might read her next book. I'm not giving up on her because she showed me with this short story, which is a really good short story. And of a lot of these authors that do these Kindle singles that are novelists and they do short stories, lots of times it's really clear they're not short story authors, but Jennifer Weiner writes good short stories, or novellas, I guess. So she is a good writer. And this just showed me she still has it. It's just down there still. So for what I have currently reading, I'm down to 3 books. The first one, now, as I said before, when I DNF'd Blood Sisters, I was reading 3 books by Indigenous authors. My 2 print books are the other 2 books by Indigenous authors. I'm still reading The Seed Keeper. I'm getting there. I'm almost done. I will have this done by the 31st. I might have it done by tomorrow. This book needs more love. As I said, second time I've read it. So this is a deep read for me, and I'm just picking up so much more from it. And I want to thank, I would have reread this anyway this month because it's for my book club, but I do want to thank the organizers of Remember December because they've really shown me the value in rereading, and going back to books that I have read before. I chose 3 books for this readathon. This is one of them. This is the read and see if you still feel the same way about it. And even though I haven't finished the book, I will say, yes, I still feel the same way about it. This was a 5-star book for me when I read it last year, I think. Yeah, I read it in 2022 because I read it for part of the Book Cougars read-alongs, and they were doing Indigenous authors that year. And then I read in a different format. I read Mysterious Ferret Styles on audio, which I loved to the point where now I have decided I'm still reading my Agatha Christie, like reading with my eyes, but I'm also following them up slowly with audio because I enjoyed that so much. And then, of course, still Villette, which I will talk about in a moment. Actually, I'm not going to talk that much about Villette, but we'll get there. The other book by an Indigenous author I'm reading, and I'm also very close to being done, is A Council of Dolls by Mona Susan Power. I've been really looking forward to reading this book, and I was hoping to read it in November, but November just got crazy on me. This is a really unique book. I like the premise of it is pretty unique. It starts with a girl named Sissy, and she has a doll, and she has this doll is kind of, it talks to her. So it's almost like imaginary friend. That's how it starts out, kind of imaginary friend kind of doll. And then we go back to her mother, Lillian, who also has a doll that's sort of going on. And then we go back to Lillian's mother, Cora, who also has a doll. I don't know if we go back any further, but nope, it looks like we only go those. We only go to those. But it becomes very clear that the dolls are a way of manifesting trauma. That's how they deal with their trauma, is they have this doll or this imaginary character. Now, I think that's really creative, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm loving the story. This does deal a lot with residential schools. So I know that there's been a lot of books about it, and a lot of people are interested in reading more. So this would be a good book to follow up with that. If you're kind of I don't want to read it. I want to read Indigenous literature, but I kind of need a break from the residential schools. Read this one. There's a little bit about residential schools in here, but not much. But this one is much more has it. But here's my warning about this book. If you are creeped out by dolls, this is not the book for you, because the dolls talk and they do things. And I tried to explain this to my bookish best friend, and she thought I was talking about a horror novel, and it's not a horror novel. But yeah, so I will say, if you have a doll phobia, you might want to skip this one. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying it. So that brings us to Villette. I'm filming this on Friday. And when it goes up on Saturday, I will have finished Villette. I have half an hour left, according to my Kobo, to read. So I'm not going to do a little spoiler thing like I did the last 2 videos with it, just because there's not really anything to spoil at this point. I read a long, huge chapter. It was 50 Kobo pages, so it's not really 50 pages, but you have to click my Kobo 50 times to get through it, of why Charlotte Brontë hates the Catholic Church. So, I'm glad I read it. I am glad I reread it, and I do actually plan to reread Shirley and the Professor. Shirley and the Professor. Those are 2 different books. Also, bookish best friends I thought it was called Shirley and the Professor. No, there's 2 books. Because I don't remember those either. I do remember Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Agnes Grey, and the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, because I've reread those many times. But these are the ones I don't remember. This is what I'm going to say about it. If you like the Brontes and you want to understand the Brontes better, this is a good book to read, because you will understand Charlotte Brontë a lot better because Charlotte Bronte's books are very autobiographical in a lot of ways. She is her main characters. If you read Jane Eyre and you're like, oh, this is an amazing book, I want to read everything this author wrote, don't read this. Don't read it. It's not Jane Eyre. It's definitely a step down from Jane Eyre, in my opinion. You know, Jane Eyre, in a lot of ways, to me personally, is almost a perfect book, and this is a very imperfect book. Now, if you saw the thumbnail for this, we're gonna talk about something. So I have this picture. I'm gonna put it up now. I'm not sure which side it's gonna come up on me. You know, I'll figure that out in editing. So, who are these people? Now, you can probably figure out what I'm gonna say just by where this video is coming up. I went down a rabbit hole. We don't know, to be completely factual, we don't know who these three women are. However, what we know about this picture and other things around this picture, evidence strongly suggests that these are the Brontë sisters. One of probably the only existing daguerreotype or photograph of all three Brontë sisters. There are pictures of an older Charlotte that exist. Now there's two photos that actually claim to be this. One of them can't be because there's clearly two different people, clearly two different groups of people in these pictures. But I will link below to like a blog post about this picture where you can actually get a better look at the picture. So when I first saw this, I thought the one standing was Charlotte because she's the oldest. The one with the scary ass eyes was Emily because Wuthering Heights, and the lovely one there is Anne. I was right about Anne. The one standing is actually Emily. And I actually do believe this is it is my belief that these are the Brontë sisters. Again, it has not been proven without a doubt, but it's my belief that they are. The one who's looking straight into the camera is Charlotte. And this goes with what a lot of people said about them at the time, that they were all kind of socially awkward. And both Emily and Anne wouldn't meet your eyes. Now, I don't know what's behind that. I don't know if in 21st century language we would put them on the spectrum. I don't think so. I don't know. I really don't know. But there are things that they were very shy. They would not look people in the eyes. They were always kind of looking down. But Charlotte would stare you down. So that fits. This also, as I said, there are photographs of an older Charlotte. We know it's Charlotte Brontë. It's pretty clear to me that there's an older version of the person in this picture. So I do believe it's Charlotte Brontë. I just want to share this because I went down a rabbit hole. I knew that a picture existed of Charlotte Brontë, and I wanted to look that up because, as I said, Charlotte Bronte's books are very autobiographical in a lot of ways. Not like these things happened to her, but she's working through things that happened to her by telling stories. And she is Jane Eyre. She is Lucy Snow. She is the main character of her books, which is fine. That's no shade on that. That's just the way it is. So this picture, when I found it and I read up on it, and I am satisfied by the evidence that this is the Brontes. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm believing. I just feel that this explains so much. I was kind of surprised by Emily because Emily to me always was the weird one. Hello, she wrote Wuthering Heights. But Anne, that's exactly what I thought Anne would be because Anne was very beautiful. And I just loved this picture. So I just hope no one finds out that this is not the Brontë sisters, because in my mind, this is Charlotte, Emily, and Anne. So if you want a better look at this picture, I don't even know if the picture's still up on my screen. We'll see what editing Melinda does. But look at the link below. There's a link to a blog post where you can look at this picture, and it talks about the proof and why they think this is the Brontë sisters. So anyway, that is it. I have a couple days of reading. I will have everything. I will have my 3 books read, and I might still have a couple more Kindle singles done before the end of the year, but I will catch you up on that when I do my December wrap up and my 2024 wrap up. And then next week, when I do my weekly wrap up, it's going to go from January 1st over just for that week. So anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful new year. I hope you have had a joyous end of the year, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, or whatever you celebrate. I hope that it has been a lovely and blessed time. Thank you very much. Subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.